Welcome to the MovieCap channel. At the beginning of the film, a woman named Carol goes out for a walk. Walking down the street, everything seems strange to him. Because you see neither joy nor sadness on people's faces. People seem to have become lifeless. This city has already become a dead city because people are arrested by the police if they get emotional. People's emotions are reflected in their facial expressions. Those who could not control their emotions are being arrested by the police. As Carol walks down the sidewalk and stops at an intersection, a police inspector approaches her. The inspector notices that his face is sweating, so he advises him to go further from here. Otherwise, he could be caught and even killed by the police. Police inspectors have the right to arrest and kill people who are mostly emotional and sleepy. After that, the movie showed some previous events. One of the space rockets broke up in the sky and spread over the territory of the United States. Media in different countries of the world interpreted this event differently. Some say it's an alien invasion, while others say it's the consequences of the end times. Everyone was horrified by what happened. People refused to examine the place because word spread that the body might have a disease. Then the director of the Ministry of Health, Tucker Kaufman, goes to one of the ruins to investigate. He investigates there and finds a mysterious back that can withstand massive radiation. The organism can reproduce rapidly, which means it came from an alien planet. Later, Tucker injures his finger by touching him as he prepares to leave. As the injury is minor, Tucker ignores it and goes home. By evening he begins to sweat and his whole body seems to be possessed by something. In the next scene, we meet Tucker with his wife, Carol. As she pursues her profession as a psychiatrist, her son Oliver wakes up screaming from a nightmare. Carol calms him down and puts him to sleep. The next morning, Tucker calls his wife, Carol, and says he wants to see his son. Carol protested and hung up on him. After a while, he sees his friend Dr. Ben Driscoll while following Oliver back to school. They go together. Dr. Ben points out that the government is withholding important information from them, saying that all the doctors at the disaster site have quit. Carol was in no mood to talk about it. Instead, she starts talking about her ex-husband, Tucker. Tucker says he called last night without hearing from his wife and son in 4 years. The two friends arrive at Carol's place of work after talking to each other. Carol falls in love with her office as usual. Later, Carol begins a daily counseling session. His first patient is a woman named Wendy, who says that her husband has been acting strangely these days. Her beautiful dog was killed by her husband for no reason, and Wendy is upset. Carol understands everything and prescribes him some medicine. In the evening after finishing work, he took his son to visit his neighbor Pam, because it was Halloween night. When the children approach the house, the neighbor's dog starts barking. The dog doesn't stop barking as if it senses something, and Carol and Pam's family continues on their way until the dog runs and pounces on Pam's son. The boy fell to the ground and held the dog's jaw with his hands. The owner of the dog comes and separates them. After a while they go back home and talk together. Pam looks worried about something. Finally, he tells Carol about his son. Pam's son says his face shows no emotion these days. Carol, being a psychiatrist herself, reassures her that it's normal for kids this age. After a while, Carol's son, Oliver, starts yelling at her. When Pam and Carol run there, they find a strange piece of meat. He takes Pam's son out of his hands. They are shocked to see this and take it to Dr. Ben's lab. There, they conduct observation work under the leadership of Dr. Galliano, an accomplished scientist of his time. At this time, the mysterious virus began to spread in different parts of the world. No one knew what it was. As a result, the number of people suffering and dying increased dramatically. As a result, an emergency meeting will be held in the capital. Well-known researchers and scientists are participating in this meeting. Tucker Kaufman takes the stage and starts talking about the virus. The fact that this virus continues to spread very quickly, that it thrives in the human body, and that if it is not prevented, the human race can be wiped out from the face of the earth. When some researchers ask for a solution, Tucker says there is no cure and suggests vaccinating people to reduce the risk of transmission. As the meeting continues, we see several waiters getting infected and vomiting into the tea being served to people. That night, Carol allowed her husband, Tucker, to see her son as a father. While walking on the road, he suddenly catches sight of a frightened woman. She was screaming for help, reminding her that something was about to happen. A car runs over the woman before she can ask what he means. Carol will be on the scene. When trying to testify to a police inspector, the inspector asks him to go home. Carol predicts that some really bad things are happening. After a while, he leaves his son at Tucker's house. That evening, Carol and her friend Driscoll go to a lavish party. There, the colleagues talk, but soon after the party, they both stay in the car. Driscoll tries to get a kiss from Carol. Carol says it's best if they stay friends. The next morning, Carol encounters a strange situation on her way to work. People were frozen. When he arrives at his office, he is surprised to hear that all of his clients have cancelled because this is the first time this has happened. After a while, his friend Driscoll calls and says that the test results of the piece of meat he gave as a sample have come out. Carol rushes to him. Dr. Galliano is waiting for him there. He found that the skin sample consisted of several spores. During sleep, it changes the human brain and genetic code, making it unstable. So to prevent a deadly infection, they are forbidden to sleep until they find a cure. After a while, Ludmilla calls Driscoll and tells him that Dr. Urish is lying on the floor. As a result, all three rush to the diplomat's house. When they got home, Dr. Urish's face was different than before. When Carol tries to take a picture of her, she becomes alive and throws herself at Carol. Dr. Urish was already infected. Carol sees this and rushes to get her son Oliver from ex-Tucker. When he gets there, he sees Tucker with some of his friends. Tucker says his son Oliver is playing at a friend's house, but Carol is worried about him. He checks the rooms, not believing Tucker's words. After a while, Tucker's associates surround him. Terrified, Carol tries to escape, but Tucker easily grabs her and knocks her to the ground and spits him out. Carl manages to escape. The car breaks down and continues on foot. On the way, he sees infected people and catches himself. Soon Carol boards a train full of suspicious passengers. That's when he gets a message from his son Oliver. Oliver begs his mother to save him. Carol is nervous because Tucker has hidden her somewhere. Then one of the passengers asks him to move without getting emotional, otherwise he will be caught and taken away. Suddenly, a group of sick passengers enter the compartment and start fighting. They try to subdue Carol, but she manages to escape. As he walks along the road, he sees the police arresting infected people. An inspector noticed that he was sweating and approached him and advised him to leave here. By this time, the city had become a war zone. People were doing incredible things to get rid of the virus. Meanwhile, Carol goes to Driscoll. He continues his research there with Dr. Galliano. Carol pleads with them to save her son, while the two researchers are still searching for a cure for the infection. While Carol and Driscoll are on their way, Wendy is being picked up by the police. Despite the fact that Wendy was beaten by the police with a baton, she still did not lose her human qualities. Carol and Driscoll notice this and conclude that Wendy has developed immunity to the virus. After a while, they steal a police car and arrive at Carol's office. There, Wendy is taken through her files. Driscoll discovers that Wendy is suffering from a severe brain disease called encephalitis. Wendy didn't want the virus to enter her infected brain. The virus thrives only in the brain of a healthy person. They will figure it out. Then Carol gets a text from Oliver, saying he's going to be at his grandmother's. Carol and Driscoll talk for a bit to figure out what to do. Driscoll escorts Carol to the bus just before the city closes. Carol sees a boy named Gene on the bus. He is constantly taking medication to keep him from falling asleep, and has not contracted the virus. Carol gets to know him and continues on his way. Finally he reaches his destination. Her ex-husband Tucker was also there. Carol finds her son, Oliver, and is delighted to discover that he, too, has taken medicine to keep him awake. After a while Gene confronts them. Carol easily knocks him down and escapes with her son. Tucker runs to the exit when they notice. He immediately catches up with them, and when he takes his son hostage, Carol saves his son by hitting him with a piece of iron. A little further, Sal goes to the pharmacy with his son. He finds an injection there and gives it to his son, and explains that if he wants to get pregnant, he should inject himself. Carol then receives a call from Driscoll, informing him of their location. As they talk, Oliver approaches the blood-spattered door, when Carol stops him and examines it first. When he sees that there is a group of sick people, he immediately shoots there. Carol uses all kinds of drugs to try not to sleep. The next day, sick people try to get in. Oliver immediately tries to warn his mother, but Carol is asleep. Oliver saved his mother's life by throwing it at her. When Carol regains consciousness, the infected people knock loudly to enter the room. Carol is about to lose hope when Driscoll arrives. They talk for a while and Carol realizes that she has an infection. Driscoll opens the door and allows the infected to enter. Terrified, Carol shoots them dead with a pistol in hand. He gets into a car and tries to escape from a bunch of infected people. Carol calls Dr. Galliano for help. After a while, Carol hears the sound of a drone and climbs to the roof of the building. Dr. Galliano was waiting for them there. They're going viral. At the end of the film, we see that scientists have finally created a vaccine for the virus. Now people are cured of the virus, and Dr. Galliano says in an interview that infected people have also recovered, and they have no memory of their past. At this time, Carol adopted Gene as a son. As we follow them to school, we see Driscoll sitting on the porch reading the newspaper. Thank you for your attention. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.